Today we're going to make a Caesar salad. But before I get started, I'm going to give you just a little bit of background how your father and I grew to love having Caesar salads. We went to a couple of restaurants before we were married that served the Caesar salad. One was the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, and the other was the Brown Palace in Denver, Colorado. And they always made it a very fancy Caesar salad where they'd bring up a bowl and they'd mix the dressing and then put it over the lettuce. And then your dad would come home after we were married. Your dad came home and duplicated the same salad. And then a few years later, our nephew, Jimmy Dom and Kelly Dom, both excellent chefs, came over and made dinner with us one night. And we were going to make the Caesar salad, and your dad was going to be in charge of that, and he was going to make it the fancy way, the way we used to have it at both of the restaurants I just mentioned. Anyway, Jim Dom looked at us and said, "Oh my gosh, I've got a much better way to do this salad dressing, a much easier way than you're doing it. Let me show you." So then he showed us how to make the dressing for the Caesar salad, and we've been doing it that way ever since. Now, I have changed the ingredients just a little bit, just to add my own little specialty to it so I can call it my Caesar salad dressing. Anyway, these are the ingredients that you need. You need the olive oil, and make sure you use olive oil. Don't use any fancy olive oil because it will make the flavor very different. Then you use Dijon mustard, and you must use Dijon mustard. If you don't do it, it'll ruin your dressing. And then you use Tabasco sauce, and you use lemon, anchovies, and these are the anchovies when you take them out of the can. You use garlic, an egg, which is separated, and here's just the egg yolk is all you need for it, and Worcestershire sauce. And then if you want to get really fancy, you do croutons, and you just use a couple of pieces of bread cut up in squares, and you put olive oil on the bread, and you use garlic salt. And then you put all these ingredients over romaine lettuce. And again, you must use romaine lettuce or it will change the whole taste and the consistency of the salad. There are all your ingredients. And now we'll get started on the Caesar salad dressing. Before we get started with the dressing, I'm going to make the croutons. And you start out with just 2 pieces of bread. You can use sourdough bread or just plain bread. This is buttermilk bread that I'm using today. And I cut them with a serrated knife. Make sure you have a serrated knife. I cut them lengthwise first, and then I'm going to cut them into squares. This might be a little bit too big, so cut that one more time. And cut them up like that, so you have squares like that. There we have all of the bread, just in cubes, I guess you could say. And then you separate them out on a pan, just a small pan. Make sure they're separated. And separate them out on the pan so that they brown nicely. Then I'm going to take some olive oil and just sprinkle it over. And then I'm going to take the garlic salt and sprinkle that over the cubes, the bread cubes. And then just kind of like that. And then I'm going to put them in the oven while I'm making the dressing at 300 degrees. And just keep watching them and turning them because you want them toasted all the way around. That's it. Once again, before I get started with the dressing, I try to get everything prepared ahead of time like I just did the croutons. And now I'm going to do the lettuce. And the lettuce is already cleaned and it's dried. Make sure it's as dry as you can get it. I spin it in the lettuce dryer. But anyway, then I just take the lettuce and I just break it up. It's pretty easy to do. You can cut it with a knife if you'd rather. Although if you leave the lettuce in the refrigerator to get chilled, sometimes the knife marks will make the lettuce rusty. Or turn it brown, I guess I should say, not rusty. There you have your lettuce. And then what I do is I wet a paper towel and I wring it out, and then I put the paper towel right on the lettuce because it keeps it moist. And then I put it in the refrigerator until I'm ready to serve. And if you put it in the refrigerator ahead of time, it keeps the lettuce crispy and really ice cold is what you want it to be. So anyway, there you go. So now I'm going to start making the base. It's called the base because it takes all this ingredients and then I don't add the olive oil until I've got this all finished. Anyway, so I take garlic, and there's probably, let's dump them out, probably about 4 cloves. And if they're really this big, then I just cut them a few times to make them a little bit smaller, and I put the garlic in. And I mince the garlic first. That seems to be pretty good with the chopping of it. And then I just take a spatula and I push it all down into the Cuisinart. I'll tell you, Cuisinart is huge. It really is nice. It makes it much faster, chops everything faster, and it blends it all together. It makes it a nice thick base. Then I'm going to add just the egg yolk, the separated egg. Now I'm going to add the Dijon mustard, and I usually use 3 to 4 heaping full tablespoons. So here's 4, and I'll look to see what that's going to look like, and that's a good heaping. Then after the Dijon mustard, I'm going to add a little bit of Tabasco sauce, and again, I don't measure. I'm just going to do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shakes. Do everything 5. How's that? And then I'm going to use 1 teaspoon, and we'll see how that looks because, again, I usually don't measure this. I just do it by eye. So 1 teaspoon, and we'll see how that looks. That looks about right. So we'll stay with the 1 teaspoon. And then I mix this up. And you can see that it's starting to get thick in there. So now I'm going to do the anchovies. And I cut these anchovies up because it makes it just a little bit easier to blend in the blender. And I'm going to leave a couple out because your dad likes to have them on top of his salad. So 1. They're hard to split apart. There's 2. Okay, and then the rest I'll just cut up. And I take those and I put those in. Then I take the top and I chop it again. Once again, it's starting to get even a nicer consistency. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of the oil from the anchovies. That's all I'm going to do. And then the last thing I'm going to add to this is a little bit of lemon. And I'm just going to cut this in half. That's probably enough. Then I blend that all together again. And there's my base. And I put that usually, I'll take that out and I'll put that in a bowl, and you can see how thick it is when I pour it out. That's this consistency that you want. And then when you put the oil in, when you add the oil to it, that makes it even thicker. There you have your base. I'm now ready to put the base and the oil together and just blend it together. And this is usually enough for 4 servings, so you can save this base for at least 4 to 5 days. I'm going to take 2 tablespoons. And I'm just going to beat this around just a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to start adding the oil to it. And you want to add the oil very slow. And I'm taking about a half a cup of oil to 2 tablespoons of base. And if I find that I may not need the full half a cup, I won't use it. So this is still looking pretty good. Okay, I think it took, instead of a half a cup, your father was right, it took 1/4 of a cup. There you go. That is finished. You can see how nice and thick this is. I'm just going to take this and pour it on the salad. And I'll throw just a few of the croutons in just to get them a little coated, and then I'll save the rest to put on the top. But there, you see how nicely those croutons came out after putting them in the oven? Serve up the salad. And I'll just take the croutons and just put a couple on the top of each one. And then your father gets the anchovies. There you have it. Caesar salad.